Harper Audio presents Number 19 by J. Jefferson Farjeon. Read by David John. Chapter 1. Trouble on a Seat. On a certain grey afternoon he was destined never to forget. He had a packet of them, and he called them his album of horrors. Ben paused before a park seat, wondered whether to sit down on the unoccupied end or to move on to the next. Decided to move on to the next, changed his mind, sat down where he was, and thereby sealed his doom. It was a pity there was somebody else at the other end of the seat. Ben liked to be alone, because when you're alone, no one can bother you, can they? But the man at the other end did not look the bothering kind, and as he was busy with a notebook and it was nice and quiet here, Ben could go on thinking. You could just hear the London traffic in the far distance, but only just. And with all this grass and trees about, well, you might almost be in country, mightn't you? What was Ben thinking about? If the man at the other end had glanced up from his notebook and made a guess, it was 1,000 to 1 chance he would have guessed right. Although it so happened, this man was good at guessing. When Ben was passing through emotion, and he very frequently was, his thoughts were as plain as the Egyptian pyramids. But during his contemplative periods, there was no knowing what lay behind his glazed, expressionless eyes, which concealed their treasure as the surface of a mine conceals its wealth. The safest guess was cheese. Ben loved to think of cheese. Though, of course, that came a long way behind eating it. Another possibility was corpses. These he never thought of from choice, but they had a habit of slipping into his mind from that lavish album of horrors. And, queer this, there was a sort of fascination about them. You couldn't get away from it. You know, once you'd done with them. For instance, take that one he'd found in the cellar at Norgate Road, or the one he'd spoken to on the embankment, or the one he'd tumbled on in the attic of number 17. Only, of course, that hadn't kept being a corpse, had it? You didn't need a war for Ben to find 'em. But Ben was not thinking of either corpses or cheese as he sat now on the park seat. He was thinking of numbers, separating the lucky ones from the unlucky ones in the light of his own experience. 17 you might call the plum. He wouldn't live in a house numbered 17, not if you paid him a couple of quid. He always gave the number a miss when he counted. You couldn't call 15 nice either. That cellar at Norgate Road had been in number 15. 13. Well, of course you could never expect 13 to behave itself. He'd known a couple of shockers. And the day he'd found 14 fag ends, he'd bust his braces, so 14 was no good either. Bending down for the last one, that was. Funny how all the teens seemed to be against you. No, the small numbers were best. You couldn't get away from it. Digits, they was called, wasn't they? Take 5. That was nice. It was at a number 5 that a girl had nearly fallen for him. Not quite, but nearly. They never did quite. Golden hair she'd had. And my, what a wink. Then once he'd bet 5pence on a horse, the only time he'd ever won. And that little kid he'd helped across the road only yesterday. She was 5, she told him, when he'd asked her. Yes, 5 was nice. Very nice. You couldn't get away from it. Ben was so busy thinking of the number 5 that he did not hear a car stop in a narrow road near where he was sitting. Why should he have paid any attention to it, if he had? It was a quiet road, and the car stopped quietly, as though the driver did not want to disturb the peaceful serenity of the afternoon, or of the 2 men on the seat, one intent on his notebook, the other gazing at nothing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?